If anyone asked me what my most precious asset has been in over 30 years of living in America, I would answer without hesitation my home. Not just because it's worth nearly $1 million, but because every brick, every window in it was paid for with my sweat and effort. I set foot in America in my early 20s, carrying only a suitcase of clothes and a few $100s I had saved from my days working as a garment factory worker in Vietnam. Back then, I didn't know much English, and the only job I could get was washing dishes at a Vietnamese restaurant, then cleaning hotel rooms. I worked at the hotel during the day, then took the night shift at the restaurant, walking through freezing winter streets just to save bus fare. Life was not easy. There were days when my hands cracked and bled from hours of washing dishes in hot water. But I didn't complain. I knew that in this country, if you worked hard and saved, sooner or later you could stand on your own feet. After 15 years, I finally saved enough for a down payment on a small 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood near a park. That condo was not just a place to live, it was a dream come true. Every morning, I'd open the window to see rows of green trees and hear children playing in the park across the street. I thought I would live there for the rest of my life. Then life took a turn. I met and married an Asian man. He wasn't wealthy, but he was kind and respected hard work. We had one son, Alex. Since he was young, Alex had been my pride. He was smart, sociable, and had dreams of starting his own business, even in his early college years. After my husband passed away from heart disease, Alex was all I had left. I kept working, paying off the mortgage, and saving a little for retirement. That home, or rather that condo, was both my emotional anchor and my security for old age. One autumn evening, with the air turning crisp, I had just finished baking a batch of banana bread when I heard a knock at the door. Alex and his wife, Emily, stood there holding a box of pastries and a bottle of red wine. "Mom, we thought we'd surprise you." Emily beamed, her eyes bright. I invited them in, brewed hot tea while Alex opened the wine. We sat around the dining table chatting about work, the weather, and little stories from the week. Then Alex set his glass down, his tone turning serious. "Mom, we wanted to talk to you about something important." I paused. His voice was different. Emily looked at me, speaking gently. "Alex's company just got a huge opportunity. But we need more capital to make it happen." Alex went on to explain his startup's expansion plans, entering new markets, hiring more staff, signing a big contract with a major partner. It all sounded exciting, but I knew that every golden opportunity came with risks. Then Alex said something that made me fall silent for a few seconds. "Mom, if we sell your condo, you can move in with us. That way you won't have to pay any bills. You'll have family around and we can use the money to invest. It's a win-win." Emily nodded, her hands gently clasping mine. "Mom will take care of you. You won't have to worry about maintenance, property taxes, or anything like that. Just enjoy life." I looked down at my teacup. Everything they said sounded reasonable. In America, it's not uncommon for elderly parents to live with their children, especially when there's mutual emotional and financial support. But I was used to being independent, used to having my own space. And more than that, this condo wasn't just an asset, it was the fruit of over half a lifetime's work. "Let me think about it," I murmured. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring out the window at the empty street. In my mind, I calculated the condo could sell for around $1 million, and with my small savings and retirement fund, it would be enough to live comfortably. If Alex really invested the money and succeeded, the whole family would benefit. But if he failed, I would lose my home, and perhaps my independence too. I remembered the look in my son's eyes when he spoke about his project, the belief and determination in his voice. I also remembered the way Emily subtly created a sense of reassurance, as if they had thought of everything for me. By dawn, I sighed and told myself, he's my son. How could I not trust him? A few weeks later, I agreed. We met with a lawyer to process the sale. I signed the papers, handing Alex the right to receive the sale money. "Mom, you won't regret this," he said, hugging me tightly. Emily hugged me too, whispering, "We'll make you proud." I smiled, but inside there was still a small knot, a feeling I couldn't name. What Alex and Emily didn't know was that before selling the condo, I had quietly withdrawn a portion of my savings along with the profit from a small investment fund I had kept secret for years. I used that money to put a deposit on an old building in the downtown area, the very place where I once cleaned rental rooms when I first came to America. This time, I had no intention of telling anyone, because sometimes a secret is the best protection one can have. About 3 weeks after signing the papers to sell my condo, I still hadn't heard anything about the money. Alex said everything was in the process of being invested and told me not to worry. I tried to believe him. I told myself maybe they're busy, maybe they just haven't gotten around to giving me my share yet. That morning the sky was gray and the early winter wind slipped through the cracks of the small rental apartment I had just moved into. I was preparing breakfast when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, Alex and Emily were there. No notice, no pleasantries, they walked straight in. Alex sat down, placing a gray canvas bag on the table, worn and a little crumpled. The faint sound it made when it hit the table was light, but sharp like a knife slicing through my train of thought. Mom, Alex said firmly, "This is your share." I blinked. In my mind, I pictured a thick envelope of cash, or at least a neat check. But when I unzipped the bag, what lay inside was a few crumpled bills and a handful of cold silver coins. The faint metallic tang rose up, reminding me of those nights working the late shift at a fast food joint, gathering every last tip to pay the utility bills. I looked up at my son. My share from the $1 million condo. My voice had gone hoarse. Alex wouldn't meet my eyes. He spoke quickly. "Most of the money's already gone into the future. You know this kind of opportunity doesn't come twice. This is what's left for you to spend." Emily, still wearing her thin smile, added, "You don't need much to live simply, Mom. Living with us, you won't have to worry about rent, electricity, water. You'll just need a little for pocket money." Her words squeezed my chest. Not because of the amount, or rather the pittance in the bag, but because of the attitude. No apology, no hint of guilt, not even the bare minimum of respect for the person who had handed them the keys to a lifetime's work. I took a deep breath, because I knew if I let my emotions erupt, right then things would only get worse. "Thank you," I said shortly, closing the bag. After they left, I stayed at the kitchen table. The weak light from the window fell across the canvas bag, making it look like a small but heavy shadow. I opened it again, letting the coins spill onto the table. The clinking sound echoed in the silent apartment like fate's mocking laughter. I remembered every hotel shift, every morning waking at 4 a.m. to make it in time to clean rooms, then spending the evening washing dishes at the restaurant. I remembered driving over icy roads just to avoid being late and working overtime during Christmas seasons to buy Alex presents. All of that now reduced to a few wrinkled bills and a handful of coins. That afternoon, I walked to the park nearby. Sitting on a wooden bench, I watched the children playing on the swings and thought, had I given the key to the wrong hands? In America, I'd learned that independence is the most important shield. Losing a home means losing part of your freedom, losing your ability to make your own decisions. And now, I hadn't just lost my condo, I was being treated as though I had no value beyond the share they decided to give me. They say blood is thicker than water, and family will never turn its back on you. But in that moment, when Alex pushed the bag toward me, I started to doubt it. That evening, while making tea, I looked at the bag still sitting on the table. I didn't move it. I wanted it there as a reminder of the expensive lesson I had just learned. I remembered Emily's eyes when she said, "You don't need much to live simply." The words sounded gentle, but inside, they carried pure condescension. They thought I would live off them. They thought I would gladly accept the role of the dependent. They were wrong. I didn't say it aloud, but inside a thought began to take shape. I would not let them think I was powerless. And I would not let them know I still had one card left unplayed. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into an old email account, where I still kept in touch with a few friends in real estate. I reread the deposit contract for the old building in the downtown area. That contract, I had quietly signed it before selling the condo. The building wasn't new, it needed plenty of renovation. But the location was perfect near the subway next to a shopping district with more than 10 rental units. The previous owners, an Italian family who had lived there for decades, wanted to sell so they could retire. The price they offered was an opportunity I knew would not come twice. I had kept this secret because I understood sometimes silence is the best protection. And tonight, looking at that canvas bag, I knew I'd made the right choice. Before going to bed, I wrote a short line in the notebook on my nightstand. Today, I received my share. But this is also the day I officially begin my real plan. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and smiled faintly. Because I knew this game, I wouldn't be playing by their rules. Since the day I received my share in that crumpled canvas bag, something between Alex and me had changed, not loud, not confrontational, but a heavy, suspended silence between two people who once called each other mom and son. Before, Alex would call me a few times a week, sometimes just to ask Mom, "What are you having for dinner tonight, or do you want to go for a walk?" Those calls have now disappeared. My phone is mostly silent except for telemarketers or wrong numbers. If I call more often than not, I hear the voicemail. "Sorry, we can't take your call right now. I don't need someone looking after me 24/7. But that silence, it feels like a door slamming in my face." The following month, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Inside was an invitation to Alex's birthday party, held at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. But it wasn't the location that made me pause. It was the line on the card, just my name bare, with no mom, no dear, no personal note. I stared at the invitation for a long time. It felt like an invisible signal telling me I was a guest, not family. That evening, I went to the party. The restaurant glowed with warm golden lights, the sound of clinking glasses and laughter filling the space. Alex wore a deep blue suit, Emily a striking red dress, together the picture of young success. A waiter led me to a table in the corner far from the center, where Alex and Emily greeted guests. I sat quietly listening to the conversation from the next table, talk of stocks, buying property, and Florida trips to Europe. No one asked where I lived now, whether I was doing well, or even how I had gotten there. When the party ended, Alex hugged me, but the hug was light and short, like one you'd give an acquaintance you ran into on the street. A few weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, I decided to make a surprise visit. I brought a bag of Vietnamese food, spring rolls, pho mung bean sweet soup, the dishes Alex had loved as a child. Emily opened the door, a slight hesitation in her voice. "Oh, Mom, I thought you'd call first." I stepped inside and saw the house cluttered with shopping bags. On the sofa sat a caramel-colored Hermes bag, which I knew cost no less than $15,000. I'd just seen it in a magazine the week before. Through the half-open garage door, I caught a glimpse of a brand-new silver sports car. As I passed the dining table, my eyes landed on an open digital receipt on the laptop, a $12,000 watch. Emily quickly closed the laptop when she noticed me looking. I smiled and asked lightly, "Oh, beautiful watch." "Where's it from?" Emily answered without blinking. "A gift from a business partner, Mom." I knew it was a lie, but I didn't call her out. Not because I believed her, but because I understood sometimes silence lets people reveal the truth themselves. On the way back to my small rental apartment, I kept thinking about that Hermes bag, the sports car, the watch receipt, and my own canvas bag with its few crumpled bills. What I felt then was no longer shock or anger. It was a slow, simmering bitterness, like a wound that doesn't bleed, but aches whenever it's touched. Bitterness not just from losing money. Bitterness from losing my place in my own son's heart. From that day on, my perspective shifted. I no longer hoped they would call just to check in, no longer waited for explanations. Instead, I observed, and I remembered. Because I knew this invisible distance would eventually lead to something bigger. They say, if you want to know the truth, watch what people do, not what they say. I began living by that. After being brushed off by Alex and Emily time and again, I realized that if I kept asking questions, all I'd get were evasive answers. So I stopped arguing. I nodded at everything they said, pretended to believe in the investment plans they bragged about. But inside, I kept my eyes wide open, listening, noting every detail. I'd never been much into social media before, but now it became a crucial tool. Every evening I checked Emily's Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok. They posted a lot photos on the deck of a yacht in Miami, champagne glasses glinting in the sunset. A video walking into a Chanel store on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, eyes sparkling like a child in a candy shop. Stories of dining at a Michelin 3-star restaurant, gold leaf steak on the plate. A short clip of Alex playing blackjack in Las Vegas, captioned VIP Night Baby. I downloaded all of these photos and videos onto my computer. Not to show anyone, not for revenge. I needed them for one purpose, only to have the clearest possible picture of what was really going on. I bought a small black notebook and kept it in the kitchen drawer. Whenever I saw or heard anything about how they spent money, I wrote it down: the date, the item, and the estimated price. For example, 2:15. Emily posted shopping on Rodeo Drive. Her mess bag about $15,000. 2:23. New sports car parked in front of their house, fresh license plates. 03:02. Merry old friend said she saw Alex and Emily in Las Vegas playing in the VIP section. 03:10. Story of drinking Dom Perignon at a rooftop bar in New York, $500 a bottle. Looking at those entries, I could see the picture clearly. The money was not being invested for the future as they claimed. It was being burned through day by day. One day, I ran into Mary, an old coworker from my days at the small Italian restaurant near the market. We sat in a cafe, sipping cappuccinos, talking about life. Suddenly, Mary leaned in and whispered, "Last month, I saw your son and his wife in Vegas. They were at one of the biggest casinos playing at the VIP tables. I thought they were millionaires." I smiled lightly. Oh, must be work that took them there. No denial, no surprise, because I knew. This was just another piece of the puzzle. I still kept a copy of the condo sale contract and the details of the account that received the money. One evening, I asked a friend who worked in banking to show me how to look up public transaction records related to real estate. It wasn't hard to find. Just days after the sale, a large sum had been withdrawn in multiple small transactions, a textbook way to avoid drawing attention. That confirmed what I had long suspected: there was no long-term investment at all. The money had been, and still was, spent immediately. Among the pages of my notes on them, I kept a separate section for myself. Because while Alex and Emily were busy spending, I had been quietly working on my own plan. Before selling the condo, I had my eye on an old building in the city center. It wasn't glamorous, but the location was unbeatable, close to the subway near the weekend farmers market, and just a few blocks from the financial district. The elderly owners, a couple, wanted to sell because they could no longer manage it. Its price was far lower than my condos, and I knew, if renovated, its value would soar. When I sold my condo, I had kept a secret sum aside, not much, but enough for the down payment, with a bank loan covering the rest. Whenever I saw Alex and Emily, I never mentioned it. To them, I was just a woman living in a small rental, stretching her share carefully. They didn't know I had signed the purchase contract for that building. On the day I received the keys, I stood in the lobby and took a deep breath. The walls had a few stains, the stairs needed painting, but the foundation was solid. I knew I now held something no one could take away, because it was in my name, bought with my money, and with no one else authorized on the title. Since then, I've quietly repaired the place while quietly watching Alex and Emily. Every time they showed off a new purchase, I opened my black notebook and added a line. Every time they posted vacation photos, I saved them in a folder called Evidence. Not because I want to strike back right away, but because I'm waiting. There's an American saying, "Strike when the iron is hot." I know that moment will come, and when it does, I'll be ready. There's one thing I learned very early on in America: everything can change so fast you barely have time to breathe. When the market's up, everyone thinks they're a genius. When it's down, you find out who can actually swim. Alex and Emily couldn't swim, or rather, they had never imagined they'd end up in the water. In the first few months, Alex's startup landed a few small contracts. They flooded social media with photos, from meetings with major partners to successful signing moments. But I noticed one thing: no one ever talked about the actual product, just endless images of parties and flaunting their lifestyle. Then one day, the glossy photos disappeared. Emily started posting less. Alex went silent on Facebook. No more yachts, no more Hermes bags, no more gold leaf steak. A former friend of Alex, also a business partner, called me speaking in a low voice. I heard Alex's company lost all its capital. The partner pulled out. They're in debt to suppliers. I wasn't surprised. Money always finds a way to vanish faster than you expect, especially when it's used to buy glitter. Just a few weeks later, I heard they'd listed their newly bought house for sale. But the market was bad. They sold at a loss, and it still wasn't enough to pay off their debts. In the end, Alex and Emily had to leave the leafy suburban street they'd once proudly called their dream home and move back to the city where rent was cheaper, and landlords didn't demand much in the way of credit checks. I knew that, because the building they chose to rent in was the very one I had bought nearly a year earlier. I told no one. I simply waited. The day they moved in, a light rain was falling. The parking lot was slick with water rain streaking down the glass doors. I was at the building to meet the manager to check some maintenance issues and collect rent from a few units. When I walked into the lobby, there they were. They were soaked, carrying a few cheap shopping bags, a scratched old suitcase, and a stack of freshly signed rental papers. No more gleaming Hermes bags, no brand new sports car, just two tired people with shadows under their eyes. The building manager, a cheerful but straightforward middle-aged American, had just finished signing the contract and turned to greet me. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Which unit would you like to inspect today?" The words seemed to hang in the air. Alex spun around staring at me as if he'd just seen the impossible. Emily's face drained of color, her lips barely moving. "Mom? What are you doing here?" I looked at them calm, as if this were just another rainy afternoon. "Oh, I'm here to check on the building. Today's rent collection day." Alex frowned, his voice. "Rough rent. Collection. You mean, you own this place?" I nodded, adding nothing. "That's right. And the unit you just rented belongs to me." The lobby fell into silence. The sound of rain outside suddenly seemed louder, tapping against the metal awning. No one spoke. Emily tightened her grip on the plastic bag in her hand, eyes fixed on the floor. Alex stood frozen, as if trying to swallow a large stone stuck in his throat. I turned to the manager and said, "Oh, and remember to check the pipes on the third floor. A tenant reported water noise yesterday." The manager nodded, jotting it down. Then I opened my umbrella and stepped outside. I didn't look back. I knew that moment was like a shattered mirror held up to their faces, reflecting everything that had happened. They had pushed me out of my own home. They had handed me a bag of loose change, calling it my share. They had spent lavishly as if money would never run out. And now every rent payment they made would flow into the account of the person they thought they had pushed to the sidelines of their lives. As I drove away from the building, the rain began to fall harder. I turned on the radio, letting a soft jazz tune fill the car. Not to celebrate, not out of spite, but because I knew the game had turned. That evening, when I returned to my apartment also, in the very building where Alex and Emily had just signed their lease, the rain had stopped. Droplets still clung to the railing, reflecting the streetlights like strings of sparkling glass beads. I hung my coat on the rack, set the umbrella in the corner, and went straight to the kitchen. On the counter, my white porcelain teapot was waiting. I dropped a few dried jasmine leaves inside and poured in hot water. The steam rose, carrying a gentle fragrance that took me back to quiet afternoons in Saigon, when I was still a young girl who had never imagined she would one day take such a long journey in America. I carried my cup of tea out to the balcony and sat down. From here, I had a clear view of the balcony belonging to the unit Alex and Emily had just rented. The lights were on inside their shadows, moving back and forth. No more loud laughter, no more clinking wine glasses. Just two people sorting through the few belongings they had left, starting over this time from the bottom. I took a sip of tea, letting the warmth spread through me. In my mind, a thought formed as clear as if I were speaking it aloud to myself. There are distances. That can't be erased. But at least every morning you'll still see your mother from your window. And you'll remember your mother was never dependent on anyone. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a bitter act of revenge. It was simply the truth rooted in everything I had endured, survived, and rebuilt from scratch. Inside the apartment, I opened the drawer under my desk. The black notebook was still there, the one where I had recorded every day, every detail, every trace of a story no one but me knew in full. I rested my hand on its cover for a moment, then gently closed it and turned the key to lock the drawer. Not because I feared anyone reading it, but because I knew this chapter had closed. That night I didn't turn on the TV, nor did I check my phone. I simply sat on the sofa listening to the ticking of the wall clock, gazing out the large window at a city gradually sinking into quiet. From this high floor, the streetlights stretched into long lines like the roads I had traveled in my life, some brightly lit, some pitch dark, and some with bends so sharp you had to take a deep breath before moving forward. I thought about Alex, about Emily, and about myself. We were no longer a family in the way we once were. The blood tie was still there, but so thin that any small collision could snap it completely. But I no longer felt the pain I once did, because now I knew I had regained something more important than anything else: my freedom. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need them to return what I had lost. Because I understood, once something has been given away, even if you take it back, it's never whole again. What I needed, I already had: a home of my own. A life where every dollar earned, every cup of tea brewed came from my own hands. And a new place not in their hearts, but in my own story. Before going to bed, I stepped out onto the balcony one more time. Across the way, the lights in Alex and Emily's apartment were off. I wondered if they were sleeping soundly or lying awake, thinking about everything that had happened. I slept well, because I knew I didn't need revenge. I only needed freedom, and I had it.